I'm Bill Thompson, and today I brought in a Admiralty lamp. I belong to a reenactment group that does everything from World War I right up to Korea. I used to use the lamp in one of my static displays. I started collecting at a very young age, and I know very little about the signal lantern other than it's Navy and it was used for visual communication at night.
Militaries have used signals to communicate coded information over long distances throughout history. 3,000 years ago, the Greeks used signal fires to relay news of the fall of Troy. Roman soldiers used polished shields to send messages by reflecting sunlight. First Nations peoples in North America communicated with smoke signals, as did Chinese soldiers stationed along the Great Wall. The British Royal Navy pioneered signal lamps in the late 1800s. Navies continue to use signal lamps today. They provide relatively secure communications and are especially useful during periods of radio silence. In the Second World War, they were essential to communications among naval and merchant marine convoys during the Battle of the Atlantic.
So what can you tell me about this object?
Actually, I know very little about it other than the fact that it was used for visual communications.
Quite right about that. I have seen these before. This is an Admiralty pattern 1038 signal lantern. It's World War II vintage. It may have been made in Canada. They were made to British Admiralty patterns in Commonwealth countries and Great Britain itself, used mostly in naval vessels and in merchant naval vessels in convoys for signaling at night. You can take a look at it. You see the pieces here. The front has filters that allow you to reduce the intensity of the light. Light is already at a very low intensity. It has, I think, a very small bulb, like a single watt.
Yeah, 1 watt, yeah.
It gives you a sense of what this was intended to do, and that was to send signals covertly in contexts where vessels were in danger of being sunk. Modest little items, but they actually played an important role in ensuring that the Allied war effort during World War II continued unabated. The war effort in Europe was supplied from ports in North America, and vessels did not sail singly, individually as a rule. They would generally travel in convoys with naval escorts. And before they left port, all of the vessels in a convoy would be given sealed instructions that would tell them their course and would also give them directions to alter course in order to avoid detection by submarines. And U-boats, of course, would be forming lines across expected courses in the North Atlantic, just waiting for the prey to approach. Constantly changing course was one way that was intended to foil that interdiction at sea. And these little signal lamps allowed you to make those difficult, very sharp course corrections at sea in a coordinated fashion.
Why would they bother using something like this, visual communication, that you have to see it as opposed to just getting on a radio?
Radio communications had some clear drawbacks. One of them being that it exposed your position to anybody who was listening. So it allowed you to communicate in a way that was extremely difficult to intercept. I'm also impressed by the fact that it's really, it's a humble object in many ways. It's very modest. A modest thing with a large impact. So Bill, I understand you're a military reenactor?
I am, yeah. When I do the World War II sauna, on the table with my static display, I'll have this lamp, and it does draw some attention to it. Once I added it to my collection, it kind of changed the way my whole display looked. Yeah. To have some visual communication device.
There were periods that you prefer to reenact?
My favorite is 18th century. I like the musket and black powder stuff and the outdoor campwear and whatnot. Another passion of mine is World War I, World War II, and Korea. I've gone to some of the encampments here in Halifax at the Citadel, and I've gone around to various museums in Atlantic Canada. People get to interact physically with some pieces of history, and plus a lot of reenactors are hams. They like to show their stuff.
Yes.
I do enjoy interacting with people and educating people is the main point.
Yeah. Some reenactors keep skills alive that otherwise would just vanish from the earth as well.
In the Sackville, we had done some gun drills on the Sackville and whatnot. Yeah. Today's standards are a little bit different. During wartime, some standards were more extreme than they are today. I was brought up in a military family. My father was in the military, my grandfather was in the military, and my great-grandfather was in the military. And my brother and I were both in the military, so that was more like a stepping stone for me to get really interested in the first place. I started collecting since I was 9. So they would have used this mostly at night, but during the day, what would they use? Because a 1 watt bulb you wouldn't see very far.
Yeah, of course they would need to maintain radio silence during the day as much as they would at night. So there were a number of ways that they could continue the visual signaling during the day. They could signal through flags, international or naval codes. You could also signal with lights, with signal projectors, but much more powerful ones as well that could similarly be focused. And some of the larger signal projectors on board naval vessels could be seen for 10, 20 miles.
Really?
You could bounce them off the clouds and see them for a heck of a lot longer. But really the point was, during the day as at night, to ensure that your signals weren't intercepted.
There's lots of ships in a convoy, so how do they all communicate if it's all visual?
It would usually start with the lead escort vessel, would communicate instructions to the rest of the ships. One of the key tasks at sea for convoys was keeping in a sort of coherent unit, and this tool could help with that. I like the lantern because it's a really sort of intimate artifact, something that you can handle and put yourself in the position of somebody on the rolling deck of a ship during the Battle of the Atlantic. Thanks so much for bringing this in, Bill. It's a really interesting object. What are your plans for the future with it?
Well, I plan to continue to use it in my displays, but the display will now be enhanced because of the information that I've learned today.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you so much for coming in today and for chatting. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. One of the main things I learned today was that communication is a very precise thing. More precise than I would have thought. Like you're at sea, you'd think you're just flapping a light or something like that and everybody can see, but it's not. I'm going to continue to use it in displays, and it's one of those things that I've always had the public interact with, pick it up and play around with it and whatnot. After today, I have a little bit more information to enhance that aspect of my display.